Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Samvad Talk series organized by IIIT Bangalore. We kickstart our new theme on technology for multiomics data analysis with today's Samvad Talk titled Multi-Level Integrative Study of Multiomics Cancer Data. This talk shall be delivered by Dr. Reddy Rani Vangimala, a IIIT B alumna and currently associated with ZS Associates. Today's session will be chaired by Professor Jaya Srivalsan Nair, who is currently working as an associate professor at IIIT Bangalore. So over to you, Professor Jaya.
Thank you, Amrita. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Reddy Rani Vankimala. She was my PhD student until less than a month ago, and she is a freshly minted PhD graduate from IIIT Bangalore. She holds a master's degree in computer science from Aju University in South Korea and BTech in electronics and communications engineering from GPREC Kurnool. Her research interests are in biomedical data analysis, bioinformatics, neuroinformatics, information visualization pertaining to health informatics, and data mining. Most of her work has been associated with data mining from biomedical data. She has worked on both her master's as well as a PhD on data science workflows, which mine such large complex data sets and extract important, significant information from them. Right. So she's looked at multi-omics data, which pervades through different omics data sets. And from them, she has figured out what is a significant set of genes that could be influencing certain kinds of cancers like breast cancer, lung cancer, etc. We are very happy to have her here and back again as a speaker at Samvad to kickstart the series. So I would welcome Rani to get started with her talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It's really warm welcome. Good afternoon, all. This talk today I'm going to deliver is on multi-omics data, where multiple level of integrative studies can be applied on multi-omics cancer data. So starting with the multi-omics as a definition. So the multi-omics can also be called as integrative omics, panomics, is a biological analysis approach in which data sets are treated or seen as a multiple omes. The omes here can be genome, proteome, transcriptome, epigenome, metabolome, microbiome, and so on. So as it is known that like we have the central dogma of biology where DNA transcribed to mRNA, mRNA translates to protein and so on. We see that these multiple levels, we get data, different modalities of data like genome, proteome, transcriptome as I mentioned here. So using all those data or using portion of that data or using all those associations or using the linear associations and so on, how do we understand the omics data for any phenome? The phenome can be cancer, it can be any psychiatric disease and so on, is the is the focus of this talk. So here the multi-omics data is multiple types of genome scale data. That usually emerged from high throughput technologies, including genome sequencing data, which gives the data, which raises the data of genomics, genome-wide RNA sequencing data that gives the transcriptomics data, methylation or histone modification data for epigenomics data, and mass spectrometry protein data for proteomics. So these are different different high throughput technologies for capturing the data at different omics level. Now going to the genome phenome associations. So we know that we have multiple omics data coming, and we know that the process or the transition from genome to metabolome and thereby phenome is causing some changes at phenome level, which can be a cancer, which can be a metabolome syndrome like a high cholesterol or apple-shaped body or so on. Which can be a psychiatric disease with, such as like Alzheimer's or ADHD and so on. So the associations of these levels of data to the phenome is what is the talk here. Here in this figure, it illustrates that a biology system, multi-omics from genome, epigenome, transcriptome, proteome, and metabolome to phenome that we see in all these rectangular boxes here. These heterogeneous genomic data exist within each level and across multiple levels. For example, there's a single nucleotide SNP, that single nucleotide polymorphisms, copy number variations, genome arrangement, rare variant, and all comes from a genome level. Then DNA methylation, miRNA, histone modifications, and so on come at epigenome level. Gene expression and small RNA, long non-coding RNAs, and other things comes from transcriptome. Protein level data comes up proteome. Metabolite level data comes from metabolome. So all of these, which comes from different levels, can be used by using integrative analysis and so on to study the genotype and phenotype associations. Here in this flow, the arrows indicates the flow of genetic information, like from epigenome to transcriptome to protein. And here the red cross indicates that inactivation of transcriptome or inactivation of translation. So this is broad, like flow of the information and the cancer multi-omics data with respect to phenotype associations. Then how do we study this? So we can have two hypotheses. As we see in this diagram, right, we can have a gray line, like which is hypothesis A, which talks about linear manner of relationship, that genome data to transcriptome level to proteome, and then phenotype. This is a linear fashion and also highly studied data. The DNA level variation here, the assumption is that DNA level variation will lead to the changes in gene expression level, which is leading to changes in protein and hence thereby the phenotypes. So it's a basically linear fundamental assumption here. Then hypothesis B is that in which multiple levels of molecular variations contribute to disease risk in non-linear or iterative or complex way. The black lines here, like these ones, it's not a linear one, right? You can see. So it says that then the data type comes from different modalities, so that the associations can be studied between multiple levels of these. But all of these demands for data dimension reductionalities and bias or noise reductions and all. So this is hypothesis B. We can study across the omic features associations with respect to one phenotype, and we can integrate multiple of that results. So coming to the example of this hypothesis B, here we have 4 different levels of genomic data, which is copy number alteration, methylation, miRNA, and gene expression. These are all having 6 possible interrelationships between these 4 genomic data. We see here, like there is a relationship between CNA gene expression, methylation and gene expression, mRNA, and so on. So we have total 6 possible gene combinations. Considering each of it and studying is what the hypothesis B is talking about. So each genomic data, like for one example, I can say that this can be converted into graph where these nodes represents the gene information of at the CNA level, or nodes can represent the patient informations. So when the nodes are patients, then the edges would be similarities between the patients. When the nodes are genes, then the edges would be the association between the genes, the strength or the bonding between the genes pertaining to one phenome. So all these interrelationship between these 4 genotype data is shown here. Then coming to the, so we now are clear that we need to do genotype and phenotype associations. Then how do we do? As I already said that we can consider some integrative procedures where we can integrate multiple omics data to study their associations. So the primary motivation behind this integrated data analysis is to identify key genomic features, and that is like importantly their interactions which can explain the biological outcomes and which can also help in studying the prediction of a particular biological outcome. So data integration can improve the power to identify these important genomic features and their associations. So this is also called as meta-dimension analysis, because we get the data from different sources, which is an approach whereby all scales of data are combined simultaneously. This means, like in this illustration in the toy example here, we see we are getting a SNP matrix, which is a genome level data, this transcriptome level data, which is gene expression, and epigenome level data, which is a microRNA matrix. So all these are coming from different levels, where the rows are the patients and the columns are the respective omic features. So here we get the SNP features, then gene features, then miRNA features. So in this toy example, we see that these are different scales of data. So in my meta-dimension analysis, it is about combining these different scales of data to produce one complex meta-dimensional model. So in this regard, we have like we can categorize it into 3 different integration procedures. The first one is concatenation-based integration. That is this. Then middle one is the second one is the transformation-based integration, and finally model-based integration. So coming to the concatenation-based integration, it is one straight imaginable model where we have 3 different matrices. We concatenate, like we add all those sets of matrices as it is depicted here, which is like just concatenating matrices and looking for the outcomes. So like though it is being categorized under 3 different integration procedures, like each of these procedures has their own pros and cons to that matter. In the concatenation based integration methods, the data dimensions, like the gene expression data, as we've seen in this example, may come in high dimension compared to the SNP data. So the bias of gene expression data would be high on the outcomes when compared to SNPs and other omic feature values. So such things has to be taken care before we go for this integration procedure. Then going to the transformation-based procedure, each of that matrix or each of that omic feature data is studied separately. And then by using weighted models or by using iterative fusion models or any of those procedures, one final network or matrix is created using which the outcomes are derived. This is one of the highly used, in at least in my knowledge, is well studied integration procedure. Then comes to the model-based integration procedure, where we first study the outcomes of each omic feature, like in this example, and then using consensus procedures and so on, we bring the final outcomes using all these all available outcomes of each of these omic features. So here we see in this example, it is like classifying phenotypes. So using SNP data, we will classify phenotypes. Using gene expression data, we classify phenotype 1 and phenotype 2. This can be subtypes of cancer also, subtype 1 and subtype 2. And using miRNA matrix also, we do the same. Then using the results of all these classes, we can derive the final classification model. So these are the 3 different integration procedures for multi-omics data integration. Coming to the examples of each of these, so the first one is a concatenation-based omic integration analysis. For that, there is this well-known tool called Athena, which is an analysis tool for heritable and environmental network association. So this is a tool here. I mean, this is the schematic overview of the integrative framework is shown here, where different levels of genomic data that we see here, the input data is used, and then produce using different analytical methods and filtering methods. This tool produces a final output. So in this case, they have implemented in this paper, they have used the Athena tool on high density lipoprotein cholesterol data, and that their results are significantly better when compared with the sparse regression model. So for the analytical methods, though they have mentioned multiple here, it's not necessary to use all of them. It can be like one of them or few of them. In the work, they have used GENN, which is a grammatical evolution neural network model. For me, it looks like it's neural networks with the knowledge graphs combination, but I am not really sure on that. I'm yet to explore this. This seems to be a powerful analysis which can integrate the data at meta-dimension analysis. So here the filtering methods here focuses on the reducing the dimensions of these data, avoiding the bias of these data, and so on. So coming to the next example on concatenation-based omics integration analysis, this is so the illustration here is an integrative statistical framework based on sparse regression model. Here, the impact of multi-layered genomic features, which is copy number alterations, methylation, and miRNA on gene expression traits, is studied using concatenation-based multi-omics model. So here we can see that the copy number data and methylation data and miRNA data is concatenated using one simple regression model and study their effects on gene expression data. So this is done on breast cancer data and showed a biologically significant results. Then going to the next integration analysis, that is transformation-based integration analysis. So we have two examples here. The first one uses the multi-level genomic data that comes from different levels of genomes, omics, and then use the integration or like a fusion of all of this and to develop a final model that gave a clinical outcomes on GBM, which is a brain cancer and ovarian cancer. The second one here is about seeing the clusters of patients which are similar, whose behavior is similar, using similarity network fusion. So we see here again we have rows as the patients and columns as the expression values or feature values. Each data is treated separately and generated a network, then fused in the D column here. It is fused using iterative procedures to produce one final model that gives a clusters of the patients. So this model is highly known and appreciated along with the affinity network fusion model, which is ANF, for their better classification or better subtype prediction in a way. And the model not only considers the strong associations between the nodes in this case are patients. It also says if it is a weak association, but it is been transformed across all those iterations and across the network, that is also been considered. So this way, the network is better because it captures both. As any other ensemble or other methods, it captures strong associations, and those methods that forgets or leaves these leave associations, that is also being recorded in this method. Then coming to the next example, that is model-based multi-omics integration analysis, where it is a straightforward analysis, as we all know. We first see classifications of each of the omic feature, then using fusing outputs, or via using the weighted votings, which is a consensus models, we find one final ensemble output on the classifier. So all of these, I guess, gave certain background on multi-omics and certain procedures we follow to study the multi-omics. So here, if we are considering multi-omics data, it is wise to study using integrative procedures for sure. So I have two case studies here to explain the multi-omics integrative analysis using different integrative procedures. So the case study one is multi-omics integrative analysis using multiple regression models, which is sparse regression model. And the case study two is multi-level integration. So we use multiple levels of integrations in this study using multi-omics data. Finally, I showcase the application of our results using a bipartite network, which is a disease zone network, where one set of the nodes are from disease phenotype, which is like cancer types, can be breast, colon, lung, and other cancer types. And the other set of the nodes, that is the right set of the nodes, are the genes that are associated to these phenotypes. Though I say like different phenomes, different disease phenomes we study, but in these two case studies, our work is constrained to cancer phenome alone. So we all know that cancer is due to abnormal mass growth of cells, which don't follow the orderly path of cell growth, division, and death. In this study, we take this cancer data that is available from TCGA. So it's TCGA is the Cancer Genome Atlas, which had about 30 different cancer phenotype sequence data available for download and work. So we capture one of the data when we capture the breast and lung cancer and a few other cancer types data from TCGA for our multi-omics data analysis. So we all know that for cancer studies that is pertaining to prediction, outcome prediction, this multi-omic information will be more useful, and also the regression model would give us more better answers. Sparse regression models and other integrated procedures would give us better answers in terms of prognosis, in terms of final disease genome and phenome associations, as well as gene-gene associations. So here, our ongoing study is on gene expressions with respect to genomic features associations, which is also highly useful for prognosis of cancer. Which is also highly useful to overcome the poor prognosis of the cancer. Coming to the case study 1, we have multi-omics integrative analysis using multiple regression methods. So here we can broadly consider this analysis as using hypothesis A, which is a linear association, which is considering which considers the inactivation of epigenome to transcriptome, that is from methylation to gene expression. This is a simple linear association. Then it is a club of transformation-based integration method, where each genome data is converted into graph, where nodes are the genes and edges are their associations, and fuse the graph information to get a final clusters information or final associations of the nodes. So in this case, we have used different regression models to generate the networks. So if we use four regression models, we get four such similarity networks to fuse and to generate the final model. So as I just said, that we use hypothesis A, where it is a linear relationship between methylation and gene expression value. Here we study the effect of methylations on gene expression values, where then methylation serves as an independent variable, and response variable is Y. We use a model that can predict the regression, that can identify the regression coefficients, where the magnitude of the regression coefficient gives us the significance of the associations between methylation and mRNA. So we use a sparse regression model, which is a powerful tool for detecting associations in high dimensional space. That is where a number of features are far, far greater than number of samples. It is obvious to see in cancer data, because we get, for suppose the gene expression data, we get about 20 to 30K genes with at least to the max of 1,000 or 2,000 patients. So it is almost like more than 20 folds large data when it compares to features to samples. So the goal here is for using sparse regression model is plain, and it's to minimize the difference between actual value and predicted value using regression models. So we use multiple linear regression models to achieve the achieve the goal of minimizing the difference between actual and predicted. Here I have a short toy example for the regression. So if we see that Y is our expression traits and X is our genomic features, and feature strength is represented using beta. So I have this example, like we have different features such as genomic, schools, country, study, and so on. we have multiple values at the features. So the first question comes into mind is, what is the significant feature and in these feature strengths? So which actually motivates us to go for a sparse regression method, that is lasso. Lasso is nothing but least absolute shrinkage and selection operator, and works in a way to fuse the irrelevant regression coefficients to 0. So the relevant regression or qualified regression coefficients would be having some magnitude, and rest all would be fused to 0. So this is the starting point of first regression technique. Then the second regression technique is about the expression traits. It's not one expression trait, right? We have multiple genomic features here, genomic expressions here. So they are also highly correlated with each other. They do possess a structural information across them. So the next regression method is the graph-guided fused lasso, which takes the lasso as a background, but still considers the structure information across the expression traits using graph-based models and predicts the regression coefficients. The third method is about grouping effects. So this method is a sparse group lasso, which is SGL, which comes with an idea of like there is cluster information within the genomic features and within the expression traits. So considering that cluster information on top of lasso is nothing but sparse grouped lasso. Then the fourth regression method we have used is a structured input-output lasso. This considers both structural information that we have mentioned in graph-guided fused lasso and grouping information in sparse group lasso, and predicts the feature strength. So now that we have methylation and expression data, and we have outputs of 4 regression models, we use all of these and we use transformation-based integration procedure to find the final gene-gene interaction networks. So this is the overview of the complete workflow, where we get the data and we apply different regression methods. The strength of the regression coefficients are also stored as regression matrices. Then we identify the affinity between them and fuse the affinity matrices using similarity network fusion model, which is a transformation based model. So as we know that now we will be having 4 such networks, because we have outputs from 4 different regression models, and we fuse all of this to get one final model, which gives a methylation and mRNA gene-gene interaction networks. So our results show really significant genes that are that shows that output gene significant ontology terms when tested with the tool David, and also had showed significant gene disease association scores. This workflow we have applied on 5 different cancer types. The output here is on one of them, which is lung cancer data, where we see that the highly affined genes had been shown in the node link diagram here, where the size of the node implies the degree of the node, and the edge thickness is nothing but their affinity. We see that the final pair of genomic features are of 364 and expression traits are of 696 genes out of. So this is less than 5% of the actual data we have started with, and these are really had shown significant biological terms in when tested with David. So this is the case study 1. Going to the case study 2. So in the case study 1, we have only one level of integrative study. In the case study 2, we have extended the work to multiple levels of integrative study. So the hypothesis still is the same, that is hypothesis A, where we consider linear relationship between methylation and mRNA. But we use multiple integrative models, that is a club of model-based integration and transformation-based integration. In this model, we use multi-layer correlation networks for cancer study to find subspace in multi-omics and to find patient subtypes. I'll explain more in next slides. So the major motivation of this work, the case study 2, is to reduce the dimensions actually. We know that we have this more number of features and less number of samples, which is a short fact problem. The first problem we try to solve is that with the motivation of identifying a subspace in genes, which is feature rich and less prone to bias and noise and outliers. And the second problem we try to address here is using these subspace in genes, how do we find the subtypes in patients? Patients subtypes in cancer actually. So we know that human genome is about is around 20K to 30K genes. And as I said that we would be getting only patients like 1,000 or 2,000. This is really a short fact problem or small and large P problem. The reduction of dimensionality is must in this case. So how do we do that? Dimensionality reduction is covered in this case study using two different integrative procedures. Then that identified subsample data, like or representative subspace of data, is used to find the subtypes in cancer, where subtypes prediction of cancer is vital for early prognosis of the disease, personalized treatment, and also which can increase the survival probability of the subject. So the proposed workflow of case study 2 is this. We get a methylation and mRNA data from TCGA for breast and lung cancer data. The idea here is to use the breast and lung cancer data is to study the subtypes of cancer in one of the widely studied data, that is breast cancer data, and in one of the less studied data, which is the lung cancer data. Then we use different integrative procedures like I1, I2, I3, as we highlighted in red here. These are 3-level integrative algorithms, which we use for identifying subspace, integrative subspace in genes, which in turn is used to identify the subtypes in cancer. By multi-level integration of multi-omics in this workflow, we imply these 3 occurrences of integration in our algorithm. Where I1 is when using multivariate multiple regression model for generating mRNA network. Then I2 is for is the multi-model based integration, as I said. Is for ranking the genes, selecting the genes, and computing the interlayer graph or cross correlations, which gives rise to this Spearman rank correlation. I3 finally is our transformer based integration model to fuse the graphs from the networks generated using samples of methylation and from mRNA, and identify the final samples to identify the subtypes. Broadly, this whole workflow can be categorized into 2 stages. In the stage 1, it is about finding optimal integrative subspace of significant genes. And in stage 2, it is about predicting cancer subtypes using subspace of genes. So when we say multi-level integration, we have integration level 1, 2, and 3. In the integration 1, as I just explained, we use linear regression model, which is a sparse regression model, LASSO. Here, we integration using multivariate multiple regressions is done. The major motivation to do this is to compute a partial correlations of the mRNA layer, where partial correlation looks at the relationship between 2 variables while removing the effect of other variables. Here, though we use the residues of this integration model to generate the partial correlation, correlations. When we do partial correlations, it will remove the effect of methylation features on mRNA. So that's the integration 1. In integration 2, if we go back, we have this integration 2 model. When I said integration 1 and partial correlation, I meant about generating this layer 1, which is partial correlation layer. Using methylation features with the biweight mid correlation, we generate layer 2. That is what I'm talking here, like a model-based integration of gene expression layers, which is partial correlation layer and methylation layer. So we have these 2 layers. Then we use this model-based integration, where we take the we identify the clusters in each layer using walk-trap community detection method, fast gradient optimization method, and low-win community detection method. So we get 3 different cluster results for each of these 3 layers, and then we take the voting, or we take the consensus of these 3 methods to rank the genes. That is step 2 here I mentioned. So ranking the genes for interlayer graphs using consensus of node communities, and based on those rankings and using the node-based measures like node degree, between its centrality, eccentricity, and all, we rank the final genes, which would give us a interlayer graph, a graph between methylation features and mRNA expression traits. So we use that layer, which and further rank the genes to identify the optimal subspace. So the stage 1 finishes in this side after we complete this integration level 1 and 2. And in stage 2, we take that integrative subspace and use the third level of integration, that is transformation-based integration, to identify the subtypes in cancer. Here we explore different integrative methods such as similarity network fusion, multi-omics integrative procedures such as similarity network fusion, affinity network fusion, iCluster, and so on. These are the results of our feature-rich representative subspace. If we see that the breast cancer data is with approximately 17K of methylation features and 10K of mRNA features. The downsample data, or the representative subspace data, is about only 531 DNA methylations and 339 mRNAs, which is less than 5% of the whole data. We see similar pattern for lung cancer data as well. Here we have plotted the node link diagrams to see the bipartite graph splitting across the methylations and mRNAs. Nodes are genes, edges are their edge between centrality measures on their cross correlation, that is interlayer graph between mRNAs and methylations. The node link diagram here shows the bipartite layer with several connected components, and most of them are forming a star-like graph structure, where mRNA genes are surrounded to methylation features. So these graphs indicate that there is an association between several mRNAs to a single methylation feature. So we see that pattern across all, and we have across all 870 genes we obtain using subspace of genes. So we fed these 870 genes and the lung cancer genes that are output of our subspace into David tool, and also to the DiseaseNet database to see the gene disease association scores. The outputs had shown enriched gene ontology terms and significant gene disease association scores for both breast cancer and lung cancer data. So this is the stage 1, like we wanted to find the optimal subspace, and these results signifies the outputs of the stage 1. Now we use this optimal subspace in stage 2 to identify the subtypes in cancer. So we have used so in this stage 2, we have a comparison of the subtypes with the annotation data, where a PAM50 data that is popularly available in literature of breast cancer annotations, and lung cancer data for the as given in the reference to here. We have compared our model with those annotated data as base model, and we see that the SNF with the heterogeneous, the HCNM is nothing but heterogeneous correlation network model. That is our two-level integrative model, which produces the subspace of data. That gave on a subspace, it gives comparable results when it is done on a full space of the data, which is like the 5% of the data, less than 5% of the data is in comparison with the whole data, which is the 16K genes and 10K methylation features. So the normalized information and mutual information and Jaccard similarity shows the comparable values in breast cancer data. And in lung cancer data, we see the highest results with the ANF on a subspace of data, and the results are better than the full data. So here we have observed network fusion based integrative procedures, that is SNF and ANF are more favorable over iCluster procedures. So then we also studied the survival probability curves using Kaplan-Meier curves for both breast and lung cancer. The image here is on a breast cancer with 480 subjects. We see poor and good survival probabilities being clearly separated on SNF data here, with the comparable plots of a PAM50 subtype, which are 5 subtypes. So with this, the case study 2, we conclude that we had identified a significant subspace, and we have identified the subtypes in cancer that are that would be useful for cancer prognosis study. Then the application, we have there is this bipartite network called Diseasome, which in one set of the nodes of this network is disease phenomes, and the other set of these nodes of this diseasome is disease genomes. So this diseasome gives an association between disease phenomes and disease genomes. So a bipartite graph actually usually consists these two disjoint sets of vertices with only intersect in edges, representing this many-to-many mapping. We usually don't see the interlinks between the sets. These graphs usually visualized using the node link diagrams that, laid out in parallel lines like this. The bipartite graphs, also called as bigraphs, are two-mode networks, which are widely used in biological networks such as ecological networks, biomedical networks, protein networks, and so on, to study the interactions between the features. So the point here is we develop the model and we extend the model to multiple cancer phenomes, and we generate a diseasome network between diseases and genes. Then visualize the diseasome network to study the interactions or to study the associations or common genes between the two disease phenomes or the gene that is exclusive to one particular phenome, and so on. For that, we have developed a visualization called RATREX, which can address this visual clutter problem when the bipartite graph is unbalanced. So here in this toy example, we can see that we have a balanced bipartite graph where the sets the nodes in one set, the number of nodes in one set is comparable to the number of nodes in another set, and the many-to-many relationship between these two sets is readable, versus the number of nodes in one set is far greater than the number of nodes in another set, and the readability is huge. The visual clutter is huge, and readability is many-fold less compared to the balanced graph. So mostly in our case, like where we have diseasome network, it is obvious to have less number of diseases when compared to the genes. So most of the diseasome network is going to be one of the unbalanced bipartite graph. To visualize that graph, where number of diseases is far less than the number of genes, we have developed this layout called RATREX using D3.js. So the case study 1 results, that is diseases, 5 cancer diseases and associated genes are used in this example. where this matrix is a composition of matrix visualization of the small set of the nodes and a circular visualization of the large set of the nodes as depicted here. We arrange the small set of the nodes as a matrix with the same ordering, that the rows and the columns are ordered in the same way. Which allows us the 4 landing spots on the matrix to reduce the visual clutter to a greater extent. Then we arrange the larger set of the nodes on the bipartite graph uniformly on the circumference of the circle using polar coordinates. Here the the radius of the circle is maintained 4 times the number of nodes on the circumference of the circle. For ease of readability, we use 3 node sizes here for the node degree: small, medium, and size. Node degree, in this case, we get the maximum node degree as 5. So we see node degree 1 as small, node degree as 5 as medium, and node degree 2, 3, and 4 in the medium. So node degree 5 as the large. The matrix model allows us to answer different questions regarding the associations of the genes to the diseases. So the first one here is unseriated version, where the nodes are ordered in lexicographical order on the circumference, and on the matrix also they have ordered on the lexicographical order. Where and then the A diagram here is the seriation of the nodes in both matrix and on the radial layout, where on the radial layout, the nodes are ordered based on node degree, and on matrix layout, they are seriated based on their patterns. So we see that the GBM and lung cancer having higher or the darker blues here, associations to the rest of the cancer types, and the kidney kidney, colon, and breast cancer had formed a different pattern, that is light blue here. So mouse overing on the diagonal of this matrix would give us the exclusive genes that are common to that cancer type. Mouse overing on the off diagonal element here, like colon and breast cancer, gives the exclusive genes or highlights the exclusive genes that are common in these 2 cancer types. Similarly, mouse overing on the on the nodes on the radial layout would give the cancers that this particular gene is common. This is mouse overing on the diagonal, which highlights the lung cancer genes alone. So with this, we conclude that we have used multi-level integrative networks of multi-omics data model, which leads to recognize significant on-code genes that is represented to subspace in genes. And we have also used this subspace to identify the subtypes in cancer. As a future work, we wanted to generalize this model for multiple phenomes and construct this diseasome network, which allows us to study disease and gene associations further. So we thank the IIITB and Visvesvaraya Fellowship for providing funds to this work, and I thank your attention. Please feel free to reach us at this email ID and to the GVCA.
Thank you, Rani.
Thank you.
A lot of material you covered in one talk. So, so first thing, congratulations on presenting this paper at IEEE EMBC 2 weeks ago. So it's pretty recent that way. So I'll open the floor for questions. Since it's a small group, we would be okay with anybody, sort of unmuting and asking the questions.
This is Amrita. Something actually caught my eye. So if you could go to slide number 15.
Yeah.
Wherein you have used lasso. So I have a very specific exposure of lasso with respect to estimating a sparse vector. in
Okay.
my area of wireless communication.
Okay.
And what has been stated in literature from that purely that context is that there have been several developments over Lasso. So I understand you started with Lasso, then you exploited the correlation, and then some kind of clustering information also. So all this has been also explored in so to speak, more accurate sparse recovery frameworks. And I understand that in terms of accuracy and convergence, so I have worked extensively on something called a sparse Bayesian learning framework. So, which is based on a parameterized prior assignment, and it has been proved in literature that SBL gives better convergence and accuracy results as far as estimation accuracy is concerned with respect to Lasso. And there are very beautiful extensions with respect to how do we exploit spatial temporal correlation clustering in SBL as well. So I think it would be interesting to explore that angle in this context, just purely from a estimation perspective. I thought I would, put across this point. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, so do you use some kind of a convex optimization tool in order to obtain these coefficients beta?
No, we haven't applied any convex operations on this. It's that this is a multiple regression model, right? With respect to expression traits and features, when we use this, when Lasso is applied on it, the data is many folds decreased, and the data the data features like important significant beta coefficients had decreased many times, and the real or like biasless expression features association to expression traits was able to capture because of the basic characteristic of Lasso that fuses the irrelevant coefficients to 0, right?
Right. So then I understand it is integrated as a part of your design, that the coefficients beta are estimated. But, the way it is estimated typically is using some kind of convex optimization setup is what my understanding is. So that is where if you use a Bayesian learning framework integrated, these coefficients can actually be computed in closed form. They are very beautiful expressions which have, convergence and accuracy with respect to Lasso. It's a completely different tangent. I just thought, wherever we see Lasso, Lasso is the first starting point, and there have been significant developments with respect to, maybe that's worth actually exploring.
Yeah, sure. We'll consider it. Actually, we did notice that there are some Bayesian models used for
exactly.
multi-omics data analysis. But yeah, we haven't explored that dimension. We will check that.
Thank you. And wonderful presentation, and congratulations once again from my side.
Thank you.
So Rani, I have a couple of questions. So with respect to Lasso and all of this, maybe a point you want to say is that this work you did like 3-4 years ago, right? So
6 years ago.
Yeah, masters, right? Yeah, so that is one thing. And we did look at different methodologies where we looked at non-Bayesian versus Bayesian methods. And Bayesian methods is like the next step to work on with respect to integrative methods, right? So we were looking at non-Bayesian methods right now, right? As a first step, right? And the next step is, like Amrita mentioned, we could definitely explore Bayesian methodology. So my questions were, so the first one is, you had worked on this data set earlier in 2017 when you are a master's student, and it is quite nice that there's public data available, open data available that several scientists can work on like this, right?
Right.
But fast forward to 2021, when you tried to work with the same data set, you face a lot of issues, right? So
Both the source of both the data was TCGA, but the TCGA, the data I got for my master's work was processed, cleaned, cleansed, and handover. Like that was the given with the. So there is this authors on SNF paper. This similarity network fusion. So that was from the lab. It directly came to me what they have used for proposing. They're publishing this paper that came to me. The difficulty we had while doing while downloading data for PhD work was we had to start from the scratch, because from then to now the data is quite rich in TCGA as well. So we had to capture the data, and we had to have our own level of constraints on it. What type of survival questions we have, survival patients we have to consider, and all of it. That make it this work more like a rich work. That made the case study 2 more rich, because we started from the scratch, starting from downloading, understanding the data, understanding the sequence of mRNAs, like high throughput data for Illumina, high-seq data for mRNA, which platform we take for methylation, 450 or other platform. All of this was the new learnings here in terms of biology.
Right. My second question is, so you have 2 applications of networks here, right? So you have worked with modeling it as a multi-layered network. And the second part is you have also looked at explored network visualization for diseasome, which is an unbalanced bipartite graph and all that. So what has been your understanding of how much network model, the use of network model in this kind of domain helps, and what are kind of the challenges that people face, like some of the future problems that would interest computer scientists, for instance, right?
Right. Agree with you. Actually, using network model on genomic networks, or like any multi-omic networks, is there from quite a long. The curse is only the dimension to that matter. Like we get the high dimension data for both any omic feature. Only for the copy number variations and SNPs it would be less, but it still be in few hundred. So a one-shot view of all nodes and links is not possible. Even in the network model. So if there is any network model which can take huge nodes and edges and like fuse that in an effective way using the degrees or using the centralities measures, and give us one finer input like the way SNF does, or an output which can allow us to explore from there. Like to that matter, here in layer 1, we have used a complete network, but it took quite a complex iterations and time. If there is any model that can give us a refined network, where we can like here we have used consensus clusters on these network on the networks. That sort of exercise would become easy.
Yeah. So there's a question from Prasanna here.
Yes.
Prasanna, would you like to unmute and ask if there's a chance? Okay, I'll just read out his question. He asks, how broad and dispersed are class feature vectors, size relative to distance, like SD or minimum distance, in ND topology?
Can you read it? Okay.
How broad and dispersed are the class feature vectors?
Does he mean about the features of each genomic omic values?
Yeah.
They are in like they range from 10K to 20K.
No, not the size. He's asking. Okay, so broad must be size. Dispersed? Have you checked the standard deviation of
Dispersed, usually we normalize the data so that we get a each column, like each feature is normalized in a way to see have a zero mean and unit standard deviation. Overall features dispersion I haven't verified, but yeah.
Okay, so there are no further questions. So thank you again, Rani, for the wonderful talk.
Thank you,
Again,
Nandini.
it's been a pleasure to have you back and present your PhD work here. So thank you once again. Thank you all for attending the talk. So with that, we can close today's session. So we look forward to more talks in the same topic going forward. The idea here is to sort of introduce life sciences as a series of talks at IIITB to improve the interest in this area, which is quite an upcoming, which is already a very active area of research for both computer scientists and life science researchers. So with that, I'd like to close today's session. Amrita, you can take over from here. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to thank the speaker for today, Dr. Rani, and our session chair, Professor Jaya, for our beautiful session. So we will close the session. Just wanted to give a heads up on the next talk aligned on the same theme. We have the title of the talk is Towards Machine Learning Assisted Precision Epigenomics, Challenges and Opportunities. And the speaker is Ms. Tanmay from University of Tübingen. So looking forward to your active participation in the next Samvad talk. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.